All right, let's go ahead and end the broadcast like so. I think that worked pretty nicely. And we are now live on YouTube. Yep, welcome everybody.
What's
And
up, Joseph?
I'm just gonna pause myself on YouTube. I felt like
Hey,
the
Tom.
role of I felt the role of Joey Dumont was played by Joseph Jaffe today. All I was doing was thinking of you, Joey.
Well, I appreciate it. This was obviously a topic very close to my heart. So great show. Very nice to meet you virtually. That was fantastic. I really enjoyed it, Angus. So thanks.
Oh, thanks, Joey.
This is my best kind of show. If we didn't touch
I can hear
back,
myself.
Joseph?
No, that's not me.
So which one is called?
That's not me.
Oh, so someone has their Facebook open. That's all.
The ultimate outcome. Today
Sure.
Tom, is that you?
to work today.
You have to close Facebook, otherwise it replays Joe's old show.
Without further ado, his debut.
Do we see who it is? I'm just.
Everybody say hello to Sam.
Oh, I know how to find it. Look, I didn't do anything actually. Who was it? Raise your hand.
It may have been me. It may have been me. Sorry, guys.
It was the guy with 2 PhDs who couldn't figure out how to shut up.
It was nice
By the
music,
way-
but I couldn't hear you.
By the way, when you said it may have been you, we were all thinking we knew it was you.
We
You
knew it
had
was the
that look of
professor.
panic on your eyes.
Well, I had too many screens open on my. I tried to get Joe. I've had trouble calling up the show recently, and so I had multiple screens open. Like, where is it going to be today? Is it going to be? It's all my fault. I'm a tech idiot. So, but Angus, wonderful. Since I'm here, wonderful show. You did a great job today of being a deep philosopher and helping us to reflect on our lives in new and deeper ways. And you even asked the question to Joseph. You gave him a chance to look like a true genius when you asked him, how has it been for a speaker and writer like him in the middle of COVID? And he started talking muted. And I thought that was the most genius answer I ever saw. That's exactly the way we all feel in COVID. He claims it was a mistake, but I just credit it to really high IQ on his part and a wonderful metaphor.
Yeah.
And again, we all know the truth.
Yeah. By the way, there's a little note in there too. I probably could have added is, one of the questions that I ask of my clients is, what does this make possible?
Yeah.
Whatever the situation is, what does this make possible?
I like that.
And when you start seeing from that place, you come from that place of power. You come from that place of iteration and agility and creativity. And now you're like fueling that gift and giving it the nutrients to like make something happen.
Hear you loud and clear. I have to say this out loud because it's been the last 3 years of my life, Angus. So I'm publishing. Go ahead. I'm publishing a book in December called "Dirty Words: The Diary of a Recovering Douchebag," and it's all about being a male, arrogant asshole, and it worked. So it was one of those things where, why does it work? Should it work? And all those things are being explored. And so, and then I'm launching a podcast in the new year. And that's my first topic of the dirty words is, why does male arrogance work? And I have a bunch of guests that I'm trying to line up. I'm going to try and grab you now too. But
Come on. Yeah.
I have a huge thing on this male masculinity thing because I was trying to figure it out. I'm a stay-at-home dad now. As I've been writing this, I have 2 little dudes. I coached 3 of their teams. I didn't tell anybody I was a stay-at-home dad for almost a year because I didn't find it masculine to say it out loud. Now I lead with it because I got over myself. But yeah, everything you said was just like, paw, paw, paw. It was wonderful. And it's nice to hear that, I'm not out there by myself trying to redefine what it means to be a man. It was awesome to hear.
Joey, that's one of the big pieces is I'm not alone, right?
Yeah.
When you find out you're not alone. So I was a stay-at-home dad for 3 years. So before I went to work for Jeremiah, this goes to you, Joseph. Before I went to work for Jeremiah Aoying, I was a stay-at-home dad. And we transitioned, and because I was running a nonprofit, 2008, 2009 hit, we ran out of funding. And so I came up, but being a community builder, that's how I got into the corporate world. But same thing. I was wrestling with like, what's my role? What does that mean to be a stay-at-home dad? What is that? And so I wrote a book about that 10 years before of my divorce and everything. And the original title of my book was called Confessions of a Man Whore. So I am fully on board with your title. It ended up being
great.
Love's Compass, and it's all like foo-foo. And I'm like, that was shit. It should have been Confessions of a Man Whore.
Yeah, that's a good title.
See, that doesn't really have at all the same kind of chutzpah.
Yeah, well, it's funny because when I first shared the title, my wife hates it. And my mother finds the word dirty, and other people were telling me it's the worst title ever. And when I got all that feedback, I was like, it's perfect. That's the title. It's going to stick because it's me.
Yeah.
For the rest of your life. Are you that douchebag guy? Are you the douchebag guy? You know?
But you know,
yes, that's it. It's it. Recovering douchebag.
The funny thing is that it's funny because you know, maybe one of the biggest mistakes you can make as an author is to fall in love with a title that feels so close to you, and yet you have no alternative. Like I wrote in Built to Suck. People will come and they go, well, that's a bit negative. You know, like what will the corporate say about that? And I'm like, listen, they can go and kiss my proverbial you know what, because if they'd read this book a year ago, JC Penney, they might not be in the mess they're in. But what you realize is you end up being true to yourself. And even if that, because I mean, I think the interesting part, of course, is the word wealth, right? If you didn't know you from afar and you were looking on the outside in, you would think, well, that's a bit arrogant, you know, men of wealth. Like, but of course, it takes all of 1 second to realize that what is truly wealth is not defined by monetary or financial gain or status, but by meaning and by purpose, and by the fact that life truly, if we haven't learned it now during COVID, when will we ever learn how short life is? By the way, your pastor friend, his name isn't Warren Hunter, is it?
No, but I know Warren Hunter. I went to school with Warren. That's awesome. Another South African.
Oh, well, he just friended me on Facebook, so I was just wondering.
He's a character. He's a good guy. Good guy. No, the guy. I'll remember it. Just give me a couple minutes. But the book was called Wild at Heart, the John Eldredge book, Wild at Heart. That was the one that rocked my world.
I've got a question for Angus.
Yeah.
Angus, sometimes the guests come into this after show and it's just a chaotic conversation amongst all of us. But I wanted to direct something directly at you because you got me thinking. In all of human history, as boys have grown into men, they've been told stories. There have been heroic tales and there have been cautionary tales. And you see this crossing the generations through the centuries. In the 20th century, you all of a sudden get to the point where there seems to be cynicism 100 years ago about the heroic tales. And so you just get the cautionary tales. I'm reading some Sinclair Lewis now, Babbitt, cautionary tale, Elmer Gantry, cautionary tale. So many cynical kind of guys doing it wrong tales. Then all of a sudden, J.K. Rowling writes the Harry Potter stories where there's like a heroic tale again. Do you think we're in a time now, 21st century, where we need to do different kinds of heroic tales? Because maybe we've learned enough from the cautionary tales not to let these warrior images and everything, you know, be our fixation, be our obsession. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that out to you to see what you thought.
By the way, you gave me a title. I may steal this, is Cautionary Males. So going back to psychology, like if you see yourself as a fighter, here's the continuum. You always need something to fight. And so when we see ourselves from that hero context, we see ourselves as always being challenged, and we start creating opportunities for us to feel less than. And we'll create challenge. We'll create things that we have to win. We have to create those more hero opportunities versus telling some of the stories. Like, I mean, we're all of age where we came through everything from Archie Bunker to all of, CBS Thursday nights or whatever it was. It was like all the, doofus, dipshit, men who were leading these families.
Mhm.
And it is something that we have turned fatherhood into a place of buffoonery.
Yeah.
And second of all, it's like, I was talking to somebody else, like the things that we collaborate around have very little depth. You want to talk about fantasy football? I will talk to you about fantasy football all day. That's my escape thing. Someone else is all about ESPN this, ESPN that, this sport this sport that. And a lot of the stuff that we talk about has a very shallow, context. It isn't until you get some of those late nights over a glass of scotch and a couple of cigars and you're sitting around the fire that you start to maybe unpack real conversation.
Mhm.
Those are the things we've missed. And those are the things that are more, I think, in terms of the heroes. Like, if I look at Joey's story, where's that hero story? Where do we get to tell the stories about the massive amount of stay-at-home dads that are around right now? And COVID is only elevating and escalating that at a faster clip. I worked with Life of Dad and built their agency. And Life of Dad is now, I think, over 3 million people. And most of the audience there, the content that they put out is humor. Most of it is humor. And every so often they throw in something, a little bit of depth. And then you've got Fatherly is another website, and there's others. But Life of Dad is something that I'm talking to them right now about, building this Man of Wealth as a program that could be really scaled at a lower price point, and taking some of my content and building around fathers to give them hope and know that they're not alone. And there's a group inside there, Joey, that's all about stay-at-home dads.
Okay, I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah.
I'm writing it down.
Yeah. So like there's a need, and wherever there's a need, there's a market. And if there's a market, we need to start building stuff around that. And I think that that's a massive opportunity, is how do we build heroes that look like they should in 2020?
Hey, by the way, is your site manofwealth.com
Under construction?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure I was
So-
on the right one.
Yeah. So I'm in the middle of a big brand change because I found my niche.
Yeah,
Man of
it
Wealth.
sounds like it.
That becomes the thing. And I have a day job where I do B2B technology marketing for an agency called Golden Spiral. It's all focused on like fintech and cybersecurity and health tech. And it's cool and all, but it's not what I'm born
That
to
sounds
do.
Golden
That
Spiral,
sounds-
is that like
that
the
sounds
Pythagorean
boring.
theory?
That sounds boring. I'm only saying that because I had Mark Masters on the show, and he's got this. He set up this side hustle that was called "You Are the Media." It's an amazing story. There were lunches in Bournemouth, of all places, small, very intimate, and then COVID hits, and he moves it all online, and he creates this experience like I've never experienced before. I was a guest, and I was like, this is your business, right? And so, the little Corona bite that I created is, when your side business becomes the actual business, it's happening to you, it's happening to me. And every iteration, every step, every moment, every show, every, podcast, you just realize that journey that you see the old you, the old world just getting smaller and smaller in your rearview mirror. That's what I think.
On the nose, precisely. And navigating all of that and working through, what does that look like to build something new? It's like an awesome challenge. It's funny, being a speaker and stuff, I don't really get nervous before I go and speak. But today, before going on the show today, it's because it's something different and I don't know how it's going to be perceived. I was like a little apprehensive. And so I just walked around. I just went outside and I shot a little clip. I'll probably put in my Facebook or in my stories. That was me turning the tide of fear into an opportunity. And, that whole thing when we feel anxious about something is like, instead of me telling myself story that people are going to reject this thing or people aren't going to like this thing, instead, I turn that into a story of, I'm excited to add value to people's lives. and I have something that's going to transform the way that they think or the way they see something. And I am excited about bringing something new to the table. And
I love it that you use the word wealth. You've kind of, you're rebranding the word wealth to be what it should be. You know, it comes from etymologically from the word weal, which means well-being, and the resources for deep well-being. We've come to completely have a superficial financial, you know, understanding of it these days. But I love it to see somebody being transgressive about a word, taking it back to its roots, which is the root of radical, being radical with a word like wealth, taking it back to its roots where it belongs.
That is interesting how we men have taken those words over time and they've become things that aren't about us. Like you were saying, Angus, it's more about what we do. So wealth was one that I didn't know the etymology of that. That's a great one. You can think of worth the same way. All these things that point to what a man thinks are his metrics. When they're really his matrix, you know, they're really like in a bad way.
Oh, look at you, Jan. Look at you. It's like honey. It's like just seeing bees producing honey. What was that
first part? It's going from something to matrix. That was brilliant.
Metrics to matrix.
From metrics. I'm actually going to hold this episode ransom. I'm not going to share it with anyone. You're going to have to pay me $1 on Venmo for me to release this episode.
But I gave you a free intro music soundtrack that you've never had before.
It was so good.
Exactly. No, I will. By the way, just so you know, this show will now be on YouTube. Which I kind of like archived there because I haven't been archiving the after shows, and also I'll send you a link to the actual file, Angus. So you'll have the main show, you'll have the after show. You know, part of why I did this was to give my guests content as well, like 90 minutes of content that they could also use and cut and you know, so it's like a dual purpose. But yeah, that was. Sorry, Jan, for jumping, but that was just too beautiful for me not to kibitz.
I feel better that you mentioned that because it makes me feel proud of my accomplishment. Thank you.
There you go. There you go. Angus, another thing you said today that I thought was thoroughly original. Our lives up until the present are tuition.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be the etymologist today, but that comes from a Middle English, Old French, Latin that tuition really meant originally to watch, to observe. And like you pay college tuition, you pay to get in to watch and observe. And then there was an ancient meaning of it to guard as well. So the tuition we've paid in our lives so far is what has allowed us to watch and observe and see and has given us things to guard. So that's going full circle back with the ancient etymology of the word. And there's a relationship which a lot of people don't realize, but as soon as you look at the two words you do, between tuition and intuition. Yeah. When you've paid your tuition the right way and you've watched and observed, you develop an intuition for what's coming next that's much deeper than what you could have had without that experience.
That's beautiful. I love that.
You guys are writing all my copy. Holy hell, this is amazing.
That's what we're for.
Wait till you get the invoice. But but you know,
sorry.
You know, Tom, you said something amazing. Like when you do this long enough, and when you've done this and heard from so many different people, different perspectives, the truly original thoughts, they are like a hot knife slicing through butter. Yep. And so, like, even for example, what you know, ironically, the word perspective, when you equated humility with perspective, I've never heard that before. You know, and that was also a really cool idea, that humility by definition implies there's another answer or another way to look at it that may not be actually as grandiose and awesome as you think it is.
Yeah. The person who's humble doesn't think he owns all the truth or all the value or all the power. The person who is not humble, the arrogant person, thinks he has all the truth, all the power, all the worth. And I did a little book years ago in 1997 called If Aristotle Ran General Motors. And I ended with what I thought are 2 keys to leadership greatness. And the keys were the dynamic balance and interplay of nobility and humility. A sense of nobility in your purpose and your meaning, a sense of the greatness of your call, combined with humility in your perspective and how you approach the living out of that noble purpose. So thank you, Angus, for reminding us that humility is not falsely believing that you are of less value than you actually are, which is a common misunderstanding of humility. Humility is all about this openness of perspective that's so powerful in life and that so too few people have. So thanks. That was a wonderful reminder to all of us.
Yeah. And that's like, thank you. Like, you're just dropping knowledge bombs on me too and inspire me. That humility, I come from the church. That was my background. And so people see humility from this place of piousness and weakness and meekness. And they don't understand that humility is actually this place of power.
Yeah. Here's the real bomb. You put me onto it just now. Humility comes from the word humus, which means earth. Earth, fertile soil. Humility is being fertile soil for the seeds of new ideas, new thoughts, new wisdom. A person who doesn't have humility does not have humus. They don't have the rich earth in their own hearts and minds. Those of us who try to cultivate that, we end up growing a garden beyond anything we could have imagined.
I can't write that fast enough. I need this recording. That was so good.
It is recorded.
But it keeps raising the price.
Yeah, right.
And it's a great.
Yeah.
No, and it's a great dip for carrots, celery. So I've got to bring it back to the ridiculous. Otherwise, I feel otherwise we get too spoiled by you, Tom.
That's so good.
Hey, we're just
that's why I said to be
known as the audience,
Yeah.
That's why I said this is addictive, this after show. And then of course, if I'm looking around right now, it's actually interesting. Well, first of all, we've got a spy amongst us, which is tomorrow's guest, Martin Albarda. He's still thinking like a brand marketer. He's still kind of over engineering everything, which is
very smart.
This is just where I get to mock him. Hello, Martin.
Hey there. No, I dialed in because I hadn't watched for such a long time because I've been incredibly busy, which is incredibly boring, but I have been. So I just wanted to catch up and see if it was still as useless and pointless as it was before. But no, it isn't. It is grown in every way imaginable, despite the main character organizing it all. So that's awesome.
Despite the host.
Yeah.
No, it's Joseph's hummus. It's Joseph's hummus, which is another word for dirt, which is another word for Joey's book, which everything connects to.
It all interconnects.
So Angus, if you look around right now, I mean the people formerly known as the audience. So Friday's show, we have Joey, we have Steve, we have Jen, we have Tom. And, depending on how many people show up, everyone has 5 minutes to introduce a topic or whatever's on their mind. I may or may not respond or ask them a question. And then the audience just panel-like steps in. And essentially I just become the conductor. And it's great for me because I get a free show. Like I don't have to do any prep. All I have to do is just zoom in on Tom, and mute Jan from time to time, which is great.
Hey, did you guys, Joseph and Angus, did you guys conspire on the Mad Men theme and how that works into what Angus is talking about? I mean, on a deeper level than just men being mad and men being out of control.
That's all Joseph. He ran with it. He took some of my stuff and then kind of his soliloquy was all based on him just observing my stuff and assembling it all together and thought. In fact, he sent me a little context of the intro and said, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And I was like,
love it.
Copywriting. If everything else fails, you should go into copywriting. You always got that.
Angus, remember when you were talking about how you were answering a question of Joseph's, which was, it was kind of about, do you have to hit bottom? And your answer was no. Hopefully you can not live this to then have to recreate yourself. That's very painful, but you can learn from others. And there was an interview with the creator of Mad Men, and he was answering a question that that I, as a creative director and writer, always would love to have asked him, which is the opening sequence of Mad Men when Draper is falling, or Draper as a metaphor for all men is falling from the building, and he's falling free fall. And turns out he doesn't hit bottom. The last episode is Don Draper realizing himself and going to a mountaintop and going through transcendental meditation or some type of introspection before we think he might have hit bottom.
It's a great metaphor.
And the original Don Draper in that regard was Gilgamesh. You guys have heard me 3 or 4 times mention the Epic of Gilgamesh, 2700 BC. Gilgamesh was a bad king. Gilgamesh was a narcissistic, awful king who by the end of the book becomes a good king because of a partner he meets. He's never had a partnership in his life, but he has somebody like Angus to talk to all of a sudden. And that's the way we learn. People think of self-knowledge as just, you're sitting alone by yourself, figuring out yourself. No, it's in conversation with somebody else, right? It's somebody else reading the label on that jar. And it can go in surprising directions, but usually it takes another sounding board. It takes another voice. That's why Socrates became famous, not by just spilling out pearls of wisdom, but by asking people lots of questions, by entering into real conversations with people. He became kind of a paradigm for how we get to know ourselves.
I love it.
I think that also goes back to the heroes. I have a big theory anyway, that is, if when your heroes are assholes, you become an asshole. And I think that that's a big issue. You talked about network TV, you grow up with Archie Bunker, but what if you grow up with James Bond, right? And you grow up with Sam Malone, and you grow up with all these people that I worshiped on TV. They were all misogynists, they were all douchey, they were powerful. I even thought Donald Trump was something else, in '86 when I first read his book. So, and Steve Jobs and Elon Musk. And if you name all these alpha males in our society today, and if our kids, my boys specifically, when they look at these men, I'll explain to them, these guys have done great. They're captains of industry, but here's some huge blind spots that they have and how they're affecting society and how it's affecting their family. There was a great article in The Atlantic, and I can't remember the journalist, but it was a really wonderful article about Elon Musk and his success and his genius. And in between 2 very dense paragraphs, she said, and he has 5 boys. And that's all she said. There wasn't anything about, is he a good dad? Is he a bad dad? Is he anything? People don't know he has kids, right? And the one thing we know is that if one of those boys is a writer, we're going to know the true Elon Musk, right?
He's going to do all right in life.
Well, it's just one of these things where it's hard for a man to watch that and grow up like that. And, my dad was a true misogynist, and he loved James Bond, and he loved all of these men. And Draper is another example. Those are the heroes that we grew up with. So when you have those as heroes as young men, and when you're impressionable, you mirror that, or you model that behavior. And I can't speak for all men, but I did. And that's where arrogance came out, because when I was grappling with my own insecurity, I was like, well, how do they act? Well, they puff up and they act confident. They aren't confident, but they act that way. And fake it till you make it, and all the old bromide bullshit that you hear growing up. So it's an issue. Our heroes are an issue.
My dad was a really passive dude, super generous, give you the shirt off his back. He was ambitious when he got young, but got kicked in the teeth when he went through a lawsuit with one of the companies, and then he just was never the same. And so for me, it was like I didn't have that model of what it could look like. And he's a great guy. I love my dad. He's an awesome dude. But the tools that I needed, he wasn't there to prescribe or to advise. And it took somebody else. And I think that's where we are as a culture. To all the things you just said, is there are few mentors and heroes that actually show us what this should look like, especially in 2020. Like, how do we navigate, this element of emotion? I got a little emotional there at the end there, Joseph, as I was saying, thank you. Right. Like, we watch some people, get out and show emotion. Then people are like, oh, what's that guy's problem? Like, he's getting all emotional. It was the politician.
Weakness,
what was that Republican?
right? Weakness.
That Republican guy from like 5 years ago.
John Boehner.
John Boehner got all emotional, and people are like, what a pussy. What a, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, this guy is like pouring his heart out, and we saw that, or as the society saw that, as something as really sad and pathetic. And I'm like, what a place of strength, and I mean, I'm not political and I'm not a fan of the space, but of the dude, come on. Like, we need more of that. We need men to have an emotion and a connection and a passion. And that's what we're really missing, is there's not enough men with passionate causes that are worthy of the world, and we're not using our gifts and our skills and our network to a place that we're creating a movement. And for me, that's where Man of Wealth came from, is I wanted to create a product. And I had done consultancies before. They didn't go so well. I just wanted to find my thing. What's going to be my thing? And I hired a couple of coaches, and they were helping me in different parts. And this one guy said, I had this little group coaching thing, and I called it Man of Wealth. And he said, that's your $1 million idea right there. He said, because it's the movement. You're creating a movement.
Right.
And that's changed my whole thought. So I'm in when Joseph was asking me for stuff, I'm like, I haven't built it yet. I'm in the middle of doing the landing page. I'm like,
I know it'll be ready in 12 minutes. Just hang on a second. But it's interesting, and obviously we discuss everything on the show and on the after show, and I think it does speak to it's something that I think we need to help everyone understand, that the ultimate role model is the president, and why integrity and why character, why this is so important, because it's just, and I'm actually saying this even intellectually and in as best as I can, as neutral as possible. It does come down to one of the most important questions, which is, when you are the CEO of a company or a country, is it more important to be damn good at your job but be a son of a bitch, or in fact to be a good person and maybe not be the best of in the business? Steve Jobs, exhibit A, Donald Trump, exhibit B, and clearly the answer is not or, it's an and. But I think it's just so important when we look at the role models that have now, infiltrated even a 17-year-old. And you can go and you can slice it and dice it and spin it. And I honestly don't give a shit about it. I just know that a 17-year-old should never be walking down, whether you love him or hate him, that should not happen. And it comes down to, and it isn't just about a role model. It is a role model imbued and embedded with all the toxic aspects of what masculinity, that's where the abolish comes into play. That's where masculinity is toxic. I don't mean to rant about it, but I mean, I'm just calling it like it is.
Yeah. I wonder who wants to run for political office in this day and age?
Yeah. I mean, you have to be really into some kind of masochism to do that, because
you're a freaking narcissist in some form or fashion. Like, that's the only people that can run for office because of the culture we've created. And so now we're stuck with the dipshits we have because of the way that we run our process. And so those who actually have character, who have moral virtue, who have a commitment to their family and their wives and their marriages, like, dear God, I'm not going to put my face out there, because they're just going to annihilate everything I know to be true. And so we've created this mechanism that has the worst rise to the top. It's the same thing in corporate. Those that are actually really effective with new ideas, who have fresh perspective, are squashed by those who have political gain. those who know how to move politics and how to throw people under a rug and know the jujitsu of that corporate context will always supersede those who are quality caliber character people. So the systems we've created are bullshit in and of themselves. And so we're stuck with the leadership we have because of the way we framed all this stuff. And if it's my personal opinion, and this, again, I'm not political, but I think some of the constructs of what we know during 2020 are being destroyed for good in a good way.
Angus, have you, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, but I thought you'd reached the end of that. Have you ever said no to a person that came to ask you for your support and help in sort of in your coaching business because you felt this guy falls in the category of people that you just described?
I haven't had that person ask me. I don't think they have. I don't know that they have the humility to do that in that context.
Right.
The ones I have.
Imagine Trump asking for help.
He
Right?
can't.
If only he did.
Yeah.
And so what if you could be a great orchestrator of community building and collaboration? Like if you had delegation skills and had charm and had vision. Like I look at someone like Reagan. You know, he didn't have a huge chutzpah of politics, except he became governor, of California. So he had some context when he ended up into, leading the, foremost power that we knew at the time. And it wasn't because he had a background of political, prowess, but he was really good at telling and orating a message and then rallying people behind it. You then compare that with Obama, who again becomes an orator and a place of character and can bring the right people in. Same thing. It's like those kinds of leaders are a little bit harder to find from either side of the fence. Is like, who's that person who will just be kind of the face to something powerful, to where, I mean, it's a really simple thing. One of the things I thought the Obama administration did really, this is not political, it's just he did really smart, was he brought in a digital team.
Yeah.
Someone who knew the future and knew that it was all going digital. And here we are in 2020. So many of our systems are broken because we didn't fully execute a digital process. And we look at other countries who are doing everything tax-wise and otherwise through just digital access. And here we are still moping on down to the DMV and all the other stuff that these are, like, to me, really critical components that should be fixed. And nobody's taking the lead on that. And we need somebody who just can see that 30, 40,000 feet and then bring up the right people to handle the minutia.
I think we got the guy.
Apparently that somebody is, yes, I was just going to say, apparently that somebody is a 77-year-old.
I think that Obama did a great job with engaging the people during the campaign and building his Obama, I forget what it was called, but we all could join and be a part of it. And
Coalition.
Yeah.
What was it called?
Coalition, Obama Coalition, I think. Was it, or am I just making that up?
It was this Obama something site, and
Yeah.
we all joined. And you're right that he did get everyone engaged with that when he built that thing. But then once he got elected, he shut it off.
Mm.
So I think one of his biggest mistakes.
Mm.
Way.
Guys, we're our technology is just completely fading like a flower here, but it's a little late as well. So I'm gonna have to just get back to the Northern Lights and go and meditate. I did want to say just two things for you guys quickly. One is new rule. I'm going to do a Bill Maher thing. If you quote a book, and for the record, Tom Morris, I'm talking to you. You are now charged with finding that author and convincing them to come on the show. So I will tell you, yesterday I reached out to two of your authors. I got one flat rejection, and then I sent them an email, a nasty email back, which I'm going to forward you. It wasn't that nasty, but I was just like, that sometimes when somebody asks a guest to be on their show, it's not always about the guest. Maybe it's also about the host, and you're actually helping them out, which would be kind of cool during the age of COVID. So I got rejected by Barbara Erin, yeah,
Yeah.
but by her publicist, right? So I said, please go and send this follow-up email and promise me you'll put it in front of her, because I know you won't, right? Who wrote Bright-Sided, because it's so relevant. But I did reach out.
She actually called me to interview me while she was writing that book. So maybe I still have her email address.
There you go. And it'll be interesting to see if we do get on the show. You know, maybe I'll have a co-interviewer. There's your little carrot. There's your hummus right there. And then I also reached out to Maria Headley because, you know.
Good.
And I basically
a translator of Beowulf. Yeah. I said,
according to one of my guests, that is my story. This is my story. So I want to like, so that's the neural. And today, who mentioned John Eldridge? That's your homework, Mr. Nelson.
Okay.
But it's part of the paying it forward aspect of the show. But what I did also want to say is Richie Glassberg, who was on the show, and we're talking about meditation. His I guess guru, or the person that helps him meditate, is actually going to come on the show.
Wow.
How conveniently is this? The day after the election. It just happened to be the first possible. I'm booked up until the day after the election. So we're all going to be meditating with or without alcohol the day after the election. So just diarize that.
We're going to need that. We're going to need that, dude.
Yeah. Well, it's fine because the results won't be out for at least 8 years. So it's okay. But we are meditating together the day afterwards. So anyway, this is, Angus I hope this was everything you expected and less. That's all I can say.
This is awesome. This is awesome.
Great to meet you, Angus.
Yeah, pleasure.
Thank you.
A lot of stuff for us to think about, Angus. Thank you so much.
Cool. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome.